Now. All right, welcome everyone. We're going to be continuing the most seminal chapter of Tanya, in my humble opinion. It's chapter 12, which talks about the Beinoni, which is actually the name of the entire Tanya. The Tanya's name is Sefer Shal Beinoni. It's a Hebrew word, which means the book of the in-betweener. And if you have the Tanya in front of you, it would actually be on the front cover. That's the name of the book. And until now, we're just going to give a little bit of a background. Until now, we were giving us the necessary ingredients, as we gave an example, the lexicon of how we are made, how Hashem made us. We introduced the neshama. The way we got into the discussion of the neshama, we asked some very essential questions of who am I? Why is it that I want to be perfect, and yet I can't be perfect? Why is it that even Rabbah, one of the greatest sages to ever live, he called himself a Beinoni? So what happened to the word tzaddik, the righteous, which we learned to be a good guy? So we had to press pause, and what we did is go in and realize that we actually have two souls. That the feeling we may have that seems negative, that seems counter to the way I committed myself yesterday to, is actually because we have two souls. The first soul that comes into our body is the animal soul, meaning it's not an animal, but it just has an animal nature, which is pretty selfish, not in a negative way, but it could lead to very negative things. So anger, laziness, haughtiness, ego, and slander, gossip, all comes from this animal soul. On its own, it's not totally bad. It's just its klipa, which means it's an external part that once that's around, it's superficial, it takes over, and it we'll explain a little more in just a moment. But then we're also given, for a girl when they're named by the Torah, and by a boy, a Jewish boy, by their bris on the 8th day, they're given their Jewish neshama, we call it the godly soul, the nefesh ha'elokit, the godly soul. And this godly soul is purely godly. It's literally a piece of God that he puts in us. It's the inner part of God that he breathed into us. And now from chapter 3 until chapter 6, we actually continue to focus on this godly soul. We said how we are hardwired, how we have inner powers. It's called the soul powers. And there's 10 elements to it. It's divided into a parent and child. It's the cognitive, which is the faculties of thought, of intelligence, chachma, bina, das, of inquiry, cognition, and recognition. And how we also have the emotions that are developed, meaning based on how we think deeply about something, how we recognize something, that's how our emotion will be drawn toward it, either with love or with fear, depending on what our mind tells our heart. So it's starting from the mind and it develops into the heart. Together, that makes the inner powers of how we are hardwired inside of us, how we think deeply with the chachma bina das, and how we feel emotionally with our love, our fear, our endurance, and the feelings of our heart. And as I mentioned previously, and I think Don was enjoying this part, is we're actually finding ourselves now during the time of Sfirat HaOmer, which is the counting of the Omer, which we focus during these 7 weeks and 7 days in each week. We focus on 49 elements of rectifying, perfecting, purifying our emotions, our feelings, because we have 7 emotions. Each one of the 7 actually is included of all 7 of them. So there's, I was actually talking with the other day with Dina that the biggest love you could show for your child is actually discipline. It's such and not maybe not the biggest, but a crucial part of love is actually discipline. So even though it's not open love, you're not giving them sugar, you're telling them, no, you can't have that, or you're telling them you have to have a bedtime, that's actually part of my love for my child. I want them to grow to be a mensch. I want them to grow to be respectful. So I make them do the dishes, even though it could seem very strict. That's the discipline of chesed. So it's not all-out love. Sometimes all-out love is not that good. It's dangerous. So it's the discipline of chesed. So you can see how each emotion is included in each one. That's actually a good. Shir is asking me more on the state of the godly soul when it comes in. Shir, that's a very good question. The divine soul, the godly soul, it is given to us when we are born, but only an element of it, only a fragment of it. But the main part actually comes by soon after birth, when by the baby naming, or by the bris. But you're right, even if a person did not have a bris, or did not have a baby naming, or did not have a bar mitzvah, because that's actually the continuation, is by the continuation. Oh, no problem, Don. Don's going to have to go. He has a conference call from Israel. Don, the recording will be available. You're asking about the recording. It'll be jewishnevada.com/virtual. You'll find the recording to this class. It'll be posted an hour or so after the class. The descent of the godly soul is actually gradual, Shira. It starts by birth, continues by the baby naming or bris, continues by their third birthday, and continues until their bar or bat mitzvah. But regardless of whether, let's say, they had a celebration for their bar or bat mitzvah or not, it happens by their age, regardless of what they do or read on that day. So a lot of people feel, oh, I never had a bar mitzvah. What does that mean for me? It actually doesn't really have much to do. Of course, they have the mitzvah to have a bar mitzvah, but it doesn't change the fact that they have their godly soul. So once we established how we have our soul powers inside of us, chapter 4 and 5, we continue to say we have the garments, which is the behavior of how this is expressed. It's the outer part of us. We have the inner part, which is our 10 inner faculties, but those 10 soul powers don't really do much unless it has a way to express and communicate it outside of it. And it does that through 3 ways, 3 garments. Garments is something outside of us. So in words of Tanya and Zohar, it's called a garment because it's something outside of us that could be changed. And that's our action, our speech, and our thoughts, the way we think about something. So one of the things we analyzed more deeply in previous classes is that there's certain things I can't stop myself from thinking of, which means if I tell you right now to think of an elephant and wearing pink skates, right now it's actually in your mind. You're thinking of it, but you don't have to continue the thought, meaning you could push it out and say, you know what, I don't want to think about that anymore. I'm going to change my thought to think about something else. So even though you can't stop what's being put into the mind, into the thought, you can actually change to think about it or not. You could either continue the thought or you could push it out. That was thought, speech, and action. Then we focus the same on the animal soul. It also has the same 10 soul powers. And it also has, it's trying to fight for control over our thought, speech, and action, because our speech, our action could only be involved in one thing at a time. And our thought also, you're thinking about one thing. So both the godly soul and the animal soul are fighting for control. That was chapter 6 and 7 and 8 was saying that even if you were taken control of the thought, speech, and action, it has a way to be elevated. It's still redeemable. If it's something that wasn't illegal, forbidden to do, according to Torah law, it's actually something that could still be redeemed. So even if something was taken over by klipa, which means I did it with a selfish enjoyment and not for the sake of heaven, not for the sake of a mitzvah, etc., not all is lost. While for that moment it was done with a negative intention, I just ate because I was hungry, which is not that bad, but you could actually redeem it by then learning Torah with that energy, or doing a mitzvah, or focusing positively with that energy and having more patience now. And then you could actually redeem it to a higher source. Hold on, Don. You mind texting me what you're asking? I'm not sure. Can't hear you until you release. Hold on 1 second. Oh, I think that's you, Don. Oh, you're able to hear me now? Okay, good. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure why that was, but let's see. Robin, are you able to hear me? Okay, good. So if all the way from Oakland, they're able to hear me. People in Novato, I'm assuming, are able to as well. So here's where it got very exciting, where, oh, thank you, Maddie, perfect. So this is where it got pretty exciting, where from chapter 9, we were saying, here begins the battle. the keys to the car could only go to one of them. One of them could be in the driver's seat. The godly soul and animal soul are fighting for control over the kingdom. It's a verse from King Solomon that says they're fighting for control, one nation versus the other nation. When one is strong, the other is weak. When the other is strong, the other one is weak. So there's constant control, fighting. And actually, that verse, I don't know if I elaborated this so much when we learned it. It's just good to summarize it also. It takes place when the first set of twins are being born. That is actually documented in the Torah clearly, is the story of the birth of the twins to Rebecca and Isaac, Rivka and Yitzchak. They're given twins of Jacob, Yaakov, and Esav, or Esau, I think is the way you pronounce it in English. And they were in Rivka's belly and in her womb, and she didn't know what was going on in her stomach. There was no ultrasounds, and she had no idea what twins were. So she went to the yeshiva to ask the leaders what's going on, and she was explaining that there's constant kicking inside, and she didn't understand it. And they told her that you have two great nations that are going to be coming from your womb, and they're going to constantly be at war with each other. When one is high, the other is going to be low. When one is high, the other is going to be low. So that quote is actually from the Torah. What the leaders of the time told Rivka when she was pregnant. So the children were Yaakov and Esav, and there was always that struggle. That's a representation, Kabbalistically, of our godly soul and our selfish soul. And there's always that struggle between them. So chapter 9 was laying out the battlegrounds. Chapter 10 said we have a tzaddik, and actually two types of tzaddik. And chapter 11 was saying how we have two types of Rasha. Just to give you us a quick summary, I'll literally do it in a minute, hopefully. You could go to recordings of chapter 10 and 11. That's actually one of the little blessings we get out of this horrible virus, is that we could record classes and many more people are able to hear it, listen to it after. Chapter 10, we actually said there's two types of a tzaddik. A tzaddik is either a complete tzaddik or an incomplete tzaddik. An incomplete tzaddik, which is more, I don't know how attainable it is, but it's more something we could relate to, meaning as we were talking with Maddie a couple of weeks ago, the complete tzaddik is something that was it's so rare. We said Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who we're going to be celebrating his date of Lag BaOmer in just a week and in 2 weeks, week and a half, 2 weeks. Lag BaOmer is the passing of the author of the Zohar, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Welcome, Diane. Thank you for joining. So that's a complete tzaddik. It's someone who fully eradicated their selfish side. It's something almost, it's not something, hello, Diane, great to see you. It's not something that we strive really toward. It's someone that they are so purified. It's selected individuals that are very few in number, that are so purified that they don't even have a negative want. They don't have a selfish energy. Nothing is for themselves. The evil inside them was fully eradicated, and they not only surrendered, they became an ally. They're totally on board to whatever the tzaddik wants for God. Then the incomplete tzaddik, and there was thousands of levels, we quoted in chapter 10, is someone who he's definitely a tzaddik, which means his only voice that's talking is his godly voice, to do whatever is needed for the world and for God in the world, and to make this world a better place. They don't have any selfish wants, and the little bit of evil or selfish that they do, it's avoided. It's not even a voice inside of them. It's a voice almost like outside of them. So there still is there, but it's so bent over, it's so subjugated to the good that it's not even a voice. It's not even counted as a voice. That's a tzaddik that's considered incomplete, which means they're definitely on the level, the status of a tzaddik, which is not just a righteous person the way we talk about it in the world. We compliment people and say, I tell Don all the time, Don, you're a tzaddik, and I give him a big pat on his back. Maddie, Moses, that's interesting. In last week's Torah portion, Maddie's asking, was Moses the complete tzaddik? I would say yes. Just the fact that he was able to speak to God and receive the Torah and enter the Holy of Holies anytime he wanted. And his whole life was dedicated and given to the Jews, given to his generation, to his flock. But at the same time, in last week's Torah portion, Maddie, it's an interesting part where he actually got angry at Aaron, his brother, his older brother actually, and his children. It was a tragic day. Two of his sons died, and they messed up. They weren't sure what to do, and Moses became angry, and they ended up being right. Oh, thank you, Diane. Is the bright light? Let me hold on 1 second, Maddie. Let me see. Yeah, I didn't prepare enough the video for today. Is that better? Oh, thank you. Perfect. All right, Diane, we need you every week to brush me up. That's good. If you could figure out my hairstyle also for next week and make me grow a little more hair on my head, that my whole family will be very grateful. So I think Moshe was, although it does say of a time of anger, which is so small and insignificant in consideration of everything else that he did. But I think he's a tzaddik. I would say for sure a complete tzaddik. I didn't find a list of all the complete tzaddiks of the world yet. But I would say some of you maybe even would be on it. I'm kidding. So that was chapter 10. Chapter 11, we spoke about a range that most of us are more familiar with, which is our selfish side. Now, this is not something accusatory. It's not a judgment. As I said last week in chapter 11, it's just the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, in chapter 11 was stating the facts. And he was saying there's thousands of levels of an incomplete Russia, someone who is compromised, someone who gives in. Now, once a person gives in to their feelings and to a negative thought and a negative feeling, it's insignificant how often they do it, although it makes a difference for sure, how often you're being unkind and how often you're being egotistical. But over here, what's important for chapter 11 was the fact that I'm giving in shows that I'm weak and not able to control myself. So the Rasha was the person who doesn't have impulse control, doesn't control their emotions. Whatever they're feeling inside, they'll just lay it out. Now, sometimes they could control it, but the fact that sometimes they don't control it, the example I gave, if a person says, I'm pretty good driving at the wheel at night, sometimes I fall asleep and crash. Would you give that person the right to drive? Of course not. They're a danger. So it makes no difference if they're doing it once a year or if they're doing it once a week. The fact that they are giving in, or in that term, falling asleep, there's a danger there. There's something that needs to be corrected. So that was the Rasha. Let me just finish. That's a good question, Maddie. So the Rasha is one that they're compromised. They give in to what they're feeling inside and they don't control themselves. So that behavior of thought, speech, and action is given over to the animal side. So whenever the animal soul decides, I hate this person, I'm going to let him have it. Sometimes you could control yourself, but the fact that sometimes you don't control yourself and you take a negative action or a negative speech, you say, or you have negative thoughts, God forbid, I'm fantasizing, and we explained last week how negative thoughts can actually be worse and more dangerous and more harmful than the rest. That is a Rasha. So we explained there's actually tens of thousands of levels of this Rasha, because actually the spectrum for this Rasha was so broad, so large, because all of us actually are in that category. We give in. We sometimes practice control, but many times we don't, or sometimes we don't. So it's not important how often it is, and not also important the severity of it. Just the idea that I don't control myself is that person is at the status of a Rasha and needs correction. We explained one of the exciting parts of last week's class, again, you can find it in the recording, is the teshuvah aspect. I found that to be a very comforting aspect of teshuvah, that a person is working on themselves. And you could, if you didn't see it last week, but if you didn't see it last week, you should watch that class. Just about teshuvah, we explained it at length. It was a very nice part. Let me just answer some of the questions. So the man is asking, is a tzaddik like a prophet? Basically has like psychic tendencies or sees things that others cannot. I'm actually reading a book of the Rebbe. I throughout the year now, especially with the shelter in place, I have a little more time to read, and I've been reading stories of the Rebbe, just some incredible stories. Anyway, it's a great book. It's called One by One, and stories of people's personal encounters with the Rebbe. And there's a few stories where one of them, here's one example. The Rebbe once had a meeting with Arik Sharon. This is in the 70s. Arik Sharon, before he became prime minister and involved in the politics, he was a hero, a general of the IDF, and was very helpful, a hero during the Six-Day War and during the Yom Kippur War, the Suez Canal in the Sinai Desert. He met with the Rebbe once, and the Rebbe told him after the meeting, "When are you going back?" And he said, "I have a flight later tonight. I'm going back tonight, back to Israel." And he said, don't go on that plane." And he didn't go on the plane. And that plane was hijacked. It was an Air France flight that was hijacked. So the obvious question, people came back to the Rebbe and says, "Why didn't you tell everyone not to go on that plane? Why couldn't you tell the authorities? If you knew that something was going to happen to that plane, you should have told everyone." And the Rebbe responded that he didn't know what's going to happen to that plane. He was just talking to Arik Sharon. He was able to see by this man in front of him, he shouldn't go on that plane. He wasn't able to see anything was going to happen to the plane. He just saw in his energy, in the soul in front of him, not to go. I would say that's a psychic energy, but to be a tzaddik, you don't need to qualify with psychic energies in order to be able to qualify as a tzaddik. A tzaddik is someone who's just perfect inside and out, which means they have full control over themselves, not only over their thought, speech, and action. A tzaddik is one who fought the evil inside of them, which means that negative, that selfish tendency that we all have and battle with, they don't battle with. Meaning, it says about King David, he fought that negative energy, that it surrendered. King David speaks about it in his beautiful prayers of the book of Psalms. He doesn't have that negative voice inside of him. So for him, it's just about the good. There's no negative inside of him, but it doesn't mean that he has to be a psychic in order to qualify as a tzaddik. So let me just answer your question in short, Maddie. Many tzaddikim, tzaddikim is the plural of a tzaddik. So many righteous, many tzaddikim, I would say, have that divine intuition. You could call it psychic. I call it ruach hakodesh, which means divine prophecy. They channel the divine in our world, but they don't need it in order to qualify as a tzaddik. So there's many people that are tzaddikim, but yet maybe don't have the quality of that psychic. Let me just scroll up. These are all great questions. Hold on, I'm just going to answer one at a time. Thank you, everyone. Diane, you're asking a great question about the addict. That's a really good question. I wish I would have recorded all of these classes in the earlier classes when we started this. I think in November or December. Tanya is there to put us on a spiritual path, on a journey, finding ourselves, not only finding our true self, meaning realizing the potential that we have, our God-given potential, and actualizing it, meaning putting our soul, our godly soul, in the front seat, and realizing that we all have it. We actually, in chapter 12, in this week's chapter, we'll see that at length, exactly what I mean to that. But then there are anyone who has an addiction. Tanya won't solve their addiction. Meaning, if it's a temperament that everyone needs to control themselves. So to a certain element, the natural tendencies of ego and self and hate or jealousy, things that we all struggle with, Tanya gives you an incredible guide to take you through. But something that's a depression that's clinical, or an addiction that is severe, you actually need psychological. Not you, but a person that has those would need more help than Tanya. Once they're on a path with medication or whatever else is prescribed for them, then they could go on to Tanya. But the Tanya itself won't solve it unless they have the necessary medical support as well. That's a very good question, and we should definitely revisit that. Shira, that's interesting. Shira's asking, would I say the prophets were tzaddikim? Yes, yes, but perhaps not the complete tzaddik. They would be on the status of the incomplete tzaddik. You know, it says, like, just to back to what Maddie was saying before, it says that whoever was on Adina's Torah and T, I think last week more longer, but I think even yesterday, Adina spoke a little bit about Zipporah, which was Moshe's wife. And there's a story in the Torah in the book of Numbers. I don't know if, God willing, the synagogues will be back by then, but obviously whatever is the safest and whatever our governor tells us. But we should be reading it in the book of Numbers towards the middle of June. The story of Miriam kind of gossiping about Zipporah. She actually said something very positive about Zipporah, but it was behind her back, and it was really slandering Moses, her younger brother, which, you know, you almost feel every big sister has a right to put their little brother in place. But she ended up getting punished. She ended up having to be quarantined. It was a time of self-reflection, the Torah says. It was 7 days until she was able to return to the camp and to the Jewish people. But during that time, God spoke to Aaron and Miriam, the brother and sister of Moshe, and told them, do you realize who my servant Moses is? I speak to them face to face. And the way that's explained is all the other prophets weren't able to speak to God face to face, which means either God came to them in a dream, or God came to them. They had said they actually. This is interesting. The Torah, the law was that when they would receive the prophecy, the other prophets in the later times here, as you're referencing, they would shake, their eyes would wiggle, I think, and sometimes I think maybe they even had to take their clothing off. They would be lying down. It was a very uncomfortable. They weren't able to handle and control and receive the prophecy easily. Unlike Moshe, who was able to speak to God at Sinai and listen to God, and everyone else was startled, but Moshe was right there, able to handle it all. So Moshe was definitely on a higher level, but I would answer your question, Shira, and say that, yeah, the prophets were on the level of tzaddik. I would say perhaps more incomplete tzaddik, but they definitely vanquished the evil inside of them. If the evil already was transformed to the type of an ally, which is what the complete tzaddik has, that the negative is actually transformed to good. I don't know if they had that yet. So Diane, actually, that's a fantastic point. Let me just say the question for those listening on a recording later. I don't think they would see the question, but would you say that we don't endeavor to be a tzaddik? So that's actually a phenomenal question. And while I mentioned this in previous weeks, while this book is called the Book of the In-Betweener, which we'll get in this week's, hopefully in today's class, the book of the person that me and you strive to be. Then there's also the tzaddik, which is really on a higher scale. It's a person who he already vanquished the evil inside of him. While we don't strive to be a tzaddik at all times, meaning it's not our driven goal in life to be on that status of a tzaddik, but we can have tzaddik moments throughout our days. And based on, hopefully in chapter 12, which is a seminal chapter, you'll understand more. Just to be a Beinoni is a really high, that's what me and you should strive to be. But even in there's pockets where we could allow ourselves and strive ourselves to be a tzaddik. Hopefully I'll get to it today, but to answer your question fully, Diane, we'll also have to elaborate on what the Beinoni is, which is the in-betweener, and then we'll see what status that's at and how much more attainable that is, and then work on there to be a tzaddik. I don't think I answered all the questions yet. Let me see the prophets were tzaddikim. I think I answered that one. Oh, bye, Thomas. Catch the recording later. Shira, that's a good question about Bathsheba and David. I don't know. Lots to think about there. Lots to think about. There's definitely lots to think about. Just because I want to try to get into chapter 12, I'll avoid the historical elements, and the Talmud actually talks a lot about that story. Maybe I gave a class a couple years ago about David and Bathsheba. It may be worthwhile to give again, but I'm going to leave it on the side now, just so that I can focus more on the chapter and not, because that deserves a good history to understand the whole story of David and Bathsheba. Okay, so now chapter 12. Now once we understand that there's a complete tzaddik and an incomplete tzaddik, we have the complete Russia, which I didn't explain that level. The incomplete Russia is something me and you are more in line with. Meaning we understand there's times we slip and times we don't. There's times that we feel bad for what we did and times that we say, I don't care, I'm going to do it anyway. It's the compromised person. It's the weak person, a person who can't control their behavior. But there's even a grade lower. That's the incomplete tzaddik. An incomplete tzaddik means his negativity is strong, but there is still some good that takes him over sometimes. There's still some good that's bent over there, that there's a voice inside of him. It could come out every now and then, once a week, once a day, or more often. But as long as he's weak and he gives in to his negative side, he's still labeled a Rasha. But then there's a complete Rasha, or another word is Tzaddik Gamor, the complete Rasha. In other terms from the Zohar was a Rasha Viralo, which means he's a wicked and it's evil to him. That's a person who has no conscience. That was a person, which thank God most of us don't relate to such a thing and hopefully don't even know a person like that. It's a person who couldn't give a darn. They just step on anyone, hurt anyone, and they don't even feel bad. The incomplete Rasha has remorse, has regret. He does teshuvah, but he slips back into it. Not by his own, he didn't even want to, but he can't control himself. He's just so weak. He's compromised. The complete Rasha couldn't care less. He has no conscience. And that's a very dangerous place. And it's interesting where the Tanya in chapter 11, the Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, only gives literally like 2 lines to talk about that Rasha, but the rest of the chapter is talking about the incomplete Rasha and the teshuvah that the incomplete Rasha does. Okay, now I'm gonna zone into chapter 12. That was a little bit of a summary, but I think summary is always good, even for myself. The more I speak it, the more it's clear in my mind. So let me just answer Robin's question. If we are Russia, why is the book titled for in-betweeners? That's a great question. If we're Russia, why are we? Why is the book titled the book for the in-betweeners? Classic. That's a great question. And most people and I said this last week, most people when they learn chapter 11 about the Russia, they almost feel like, okay, I'm giving up. I'm a Russia. That's like an insult. But understanding a little more the title, Russia, what it means, it's actually people that do kind things, but do it for their own selfish wants, are there also. So chapter 12 is really the jumpstart. All this until now was putting all the players on the battlefield. But now the Beinoni, which is chapter 12, one of the most important lines of the whole Tanya, we're going to learn, hopefully today, is by birth, me and you and every single person born, by nature, they have that power to be Beinoni. Me and you every day, not only we can strive to be a Beinoni, it's attainable, and every minute of our day we could be a Beinoni. So hopefully that didn't answer your question fully, but the chapter 12 will answer your question. The answer would be that me and you have that capacity to be a Beinoni. The whole program guide is to strive to be a Beinoni. And that's the crucial element. And to realize that each one of you watching this, or any person in the street, realize that they have that power, that capacity by birth, by nature, God-given. It's not a gift. It's natural. It's something that God gave each and every one of us, the ability to be a Beinoni, the ability to have impulse control, the ability to master our behavior. That's what a Beinoni is. So So a Beinoni, let me just say it in one sentence and then break it up. A Beinoni, on the inside, the Beinoni is a Rasha. On the outside, the Beinoni is a tzaddik. I want to explain what that means. A Beinoni, on the inside, they have the same soul powers that the Rasha has, which means their feelings in their heart and their cognitive, their chachma bina dat, which is their chabad, the way their cognitive faculties are hardwired, could have negative wants. They have a negative feeling towards someone. They have negative thoughts that are coming up. And it's not even something that they could fight. Because the example I gave is when you have a computer, many times, even with a good filter, every now and then there could be a pop-up of something inappropriate. I can't stop that pop-up from coming up. It pops up on my screen when I'm trying to watch something or trying to go on a certain site, whatever it is. But I could control if I will click on it or if I will X out of it. That's in my control. So the Rasha is one that the pop-up comes up from his hardwired thinking, his chachma bina das, which is his cognitive inquiry is first, the cognitive and recognition on something, and then his feelings develop. The Rasha gives into it, which means he clicks on it. He loves it. He says, oh, even if he doesn't love it, he can't stop himself from going at it. He's weak. The tzaddik, on the other hand, doesn't even have those pop-ups because the inner soul powers of the tzaddik is pure. So there's no evil inside of him stirring it up. So his feelings don't have a negative element to it, popping anything up from his thoughts, from his chachma bina das, I have to say the Hebrew there, his chachma bina das. It's not popping up a virus that it's trying to put out to the person. The Beinoni, on the inside, he's not pure yet, which means he's like a Rasha on the inside, which means his feelings of his heart and the cognitive faculties of his mind, which is chachma bina das, the way I used to translate it is wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, but the way this Tanya translates it in English is his inquiry toward on something, his cognition of it, and his recognition when he applies it to himself and develops the feelings of the heart. The Beinoni has those that are not all. He has the animal soul still inside of him. So the soul powers of the godly soul is there, but the soul powers of the animal soul is there too. So it's still feeding pop-ups to the person. But the Beinoni doesn't give in. He controls himself, which means if he's going to act on it, if he's going to speak about it, or if he's going to continue to think and fantasize on it, that's a Rasha. If he's able to control himself, that's a Beinoni. And here's the beautiful gift that we're given, is that me and you have that power by nature, by birth, to be a Beinoni. Which means every moment of our day, we can't control our thoughts, our speech, and our action. We may not be able to control the pop-up, but we can control if we're going to click on it. We can control, and that's what I want to focus on now, is that's so hard. How do you control yourself? I couldn't control myself. I couldn't hold myself back. You could. So there's, now he's a big rabbi, but growing up before, this is in the 60s, he grew up in Montreal, in my hometown. So I know the story, I know the rabbi. He had an uncle who would come visit from France. There's in the south of Paris, there's a little town, it's called Beinoni. And many yeshiva boys in Chabad went to the yeshiva, to the rabbinical school in Beinoni. It opened after the war. After in Europe, when Jews were scattered across DP camps and different places, the previous rabbi opened up a yeshiva in Paris, in the south of Paris, a little town called Beinoni. Many great Hasidim came from this yeshiva because of the rabbi. He was called the Mashpia, which is the mentor of the young students, of the teenagers of this yeshiva. The rabbi's name was Rabbi Nissen. His first name was Nissen. His last name was Nemenov. Now his son, he passed away already. His son is now the mentor and continues in his father's footsteps. And it's a very successful yeshiva. Many of my friends went there. But this mentor from the 60s, he started the yeshiva in the 40s. Rumor had it that he was a Beinoni, that he was able to practice what the Tanya talks about a Beinoni. And that was the rumor. Everyone would say, oh, he's a Beinoni. It's like a big compliment for someone to be a Beinoni. But what's beautiful is the person who's the Beinoni doesn't want the compliment because they're fighting it. It's not about themselves. They're working on their control. So he would stay with his family when he would visit Montreal to fundraise for his yeshiva. So his nephews, they would live with him in the house for the few weeks that their uncle would come. And they once asked him, they were little, they were 7 and 8 years old. They said, Nissen, uncle, they called him Vetter Nissen, which in Yiddish means Uncle Nissen. And by the way, I'm giving a Yiddish class at 12 o'clock, and we're learning a lot of Yiddish expressions. Today we're going to be singing Tumba Lala. So it should be a lot of fun. That's at 12 o'clock, a Yiddish class. But they asked him, Nissen, are you a Beinoni? Meaning, are you this person that the Tanya talks about in chapter 12, that you have full self-control? And he didn't even say, yeah, I'm a Beinoni. Or he didn't deny it. He said to the 7-year-old, he said, you could be a Beinoni too. And they're like, really? How? And the uncle told him, take a prayer book and start praying. So the boy is there all excited. He takes a prayer book, a book of Psalms, of Tehillim from King David, and he starts praying. For 5 minutes, the uncle comes in after, and he says, so what did you do for these 5 minutes? He says, I was praying. So the uncle asked him, did you have any negative actions when you were praying? He says, no. Did you say anything bad when you were praying? He says, no. Did you think anything bad when you're praying? He said, no, I was just thinking, I don't know why my uncle wants me to pray now, but I was just praying. He said, okay, you were a Beinoni for these 5 minutes. You practice self-control in your thought, speech, and action. Now just keep this up. Every minute, practice self-control, and you are a Beinoni. So the Beinoni is something not only attainable, it's something that we have by nature. I have some notes on here to explain this Beinoni a little more. A Beinoni is someone that has impulse control. He may not be able to control his emotions, but he's able to control his behaviors. So his feeling may be raging, but he doesn't yell. He's able to control it. So he can't stop the feeling. That's a tzaddik if he's able to not have the feeling of negative, but he's able to control his behavior. And the Zohar gives, in chapter 12, the reason why I'm prepping you for this, because in chapter 12, we're going to see, thank you, Maddie, I'm glad this is working. We're going to learn a passage of the Zohar, which is the cornerstone book of Kabbalah. So many people love Kabbalah, but Kabbalah needs to be practical. So Tanya, in 2 words, is practical Kabbalah. That's what Chassidus is. All the teachings of what Adina and I and Chassidim and the Rebbe taught, and all the Rebbes taught, based on this Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe from the 1700s, is all practical Kabbalah. So there's a quote from the Zohar that is the seminal point of chapter 12, and chapter 12 is the seminal point of the Tanya. The quote is that by birth, by nature, and he reiterates it a few times, a quote from the Zohar, by birth, by nature, our mind controls over on the heart. The mind controls the heart by birth. And I know too many people, and we all know, I know myself, sometimes we tell ourselves, I just couldn't control myself. I had to yell back. I was so angry. But the simple answer is, you could have controlled yourself. You chose not to. But everyone has the choice to act on their feelings or not. Meaning your mind, which if anyone remembers in chapter 9, we said the not the center, the main anchor, right? I don't know the anchor. The main the stronghold of the godly soul, the kingdom, the godly soul is actually in the mind. the heart is the main place of the animal soul. Does anyone remember that in chapter 9? But by nature, our mind controls over our heart. To explain this, I explained this, I think, already twice to most of us on this call, but it's worth to reiterate. Very good. In the Torah, it says about tzitzis, that wherever we go, our talit, where we wear in prayer in synagogue, but really our tzitzis, which is the spaghetti hangs out by the rabbi and his son's garments. The tzitzis is to remind us of all the mitzvahs. Everywhere we are, we have an opportunity to do a mitzvah, and we control ourselves, reminding ourselves who we are. That's right, Shira. But the story of when I was with Adina and we were in a parking lot, it's a story anyone could use because it's so true. And there was a woman that walks with her. Let me elaborate a little bit more on the story. Adina went into the store. I stayed in the car, in the passenger seat, and a young mom with her 5-year-old child or so was going after their grocery shopping back to their car and buckling the kid in, goes to the front seat, closes the door, doesn't realize that I'm right next to them because I'm in the passenger seat of this car and she's in the driver's seat of this car, and we're parallel to each other. And as soon as she closes the door after buckling her son in, she turns around to her son and she starts yelling. I'm able to hear the yelling from outside of her car, inside of my car, and I'm able to hear the yelling. I don't know what she was yelling. And after 20 seconds of this yelling, anger, she looks while she was taking her buckle back on this side to buckle herself, and she sees I'm right there. Zipped it up. She stopped yelling, reversed out, very embarrassed probably. Now, where did she get angry? She got angry in the store probably. The kid maybe wanted a chocolate bar and she didn't want to give it to her, embarrassed her, I have no idea. She walked with her son back, buckled him up, got in the car and no one's listening, then she yelled. As soon as she saw that someone was there, she was able to stop. Even she has impulse control. And not, if you're driving a car and you're on a freeway going 75 miles an hour, and then there's a blockage, cars up ahead and you have to stop, it takes you a few seconds to brake. And yet over here, instantly she was able to lash out in an anger. Instantly she was able to control it. Because by nature, it's something we were given naturally. We could control our behavior. I hope that makes sense. So I'm not saying that she should control her feelings, because that's hardwired. She got angry. And that's next chapters of Tanya, we're going to talk about how to control the soul powers. How do we rectify the soul powers? But that's a much longer meditation. That's going to take a longer time, and that's the longer road. The way we started the introduction to Tanya, where there is a long, short way and a short, long way. Right now we're on the short, long way, which is analyzing the Beinoni and how to practice impulse control. But it's not going to focus on how do we fight the negative feelings inside of us. That's going to be a longer meditation. It's going to take place in several chapters from now. But for now, my point I'm trying to bring is we could look at the lady and judge her, but we all have feelings inside of us. The difference is if we're controlling that feeling. A Rasha is one that doesn't control the feeling. Or they pick and choose. Sometimes they control their feelings. Sometimes they don't. They're weak. A Beinoni is one that committed to always control their behavior and practices it. So each and every one of us have that commitment. We can make the commitment today. I'm a Beinoni. I'm not going to slip. I may have negative feelings, but my behavior is non-negotiable. Now, we could slip on it. A Beinoni is one that doesn't slip. In Tanya, we're going to see in this chapter a very heavy line. It says a Beinoni is a person that never slipped, never sinned, and never will. So right now, I could close the book and say, forget it. Rabbi, that was great for the months that we've been studying, but I just found out it's not for me. So the Rebbe actually explains that line when it says about the Beinoni that he never transgressed, that he never will. It's not talking about in life in general. It's talking about the way he made his commitment now. He's ready for the fight. She's ready for the game. She's not at her point now. She's not giving in. So I think maybe I gave this joke last week, where there are those that in between meals they're on a diet, but they know they're going to be eating again. That's not the Beinoni. The Beinoni is not they're going to be good now until the next cigarette. That's not the Beinoni. The Beinoni is they mean it seriously, and at the stage that they are in now, the new person that they just found inside of themselves, they never sin. As they are now, the Beinoni status that they are, the previous status, they were a Russia. But now they're at a Beinoni. At a Beinoni level, nothing bad ever happened to them, and nothing will. Now, something may happen, but they're not planning it and say, I'm going to control myself until I get in front of their face. And then when I'm in front of them, I'm going to lash out. That's not a Beinoni, because you're planning already for a state of weakness. So a person who's planning to quit but keeps the pack of cigarettes nearby just in case he's going to need a cigarette in the middle of the night, that's not a real quitter. That's someone who's keeping in the back pocket a chance for escape. A Beinoni is one that made a strong commitment, and at the state of his commitment now, he never did and never will sin. And that's the difference between a Rasha and the tzaddik. So the Rasha and the Beinoni. The Rasha is weak and he gives in. The Beinoni is impure on the inside, which means the soul powers. The animal soul is still feeding him information, still feeding him feelings, but he doesn't act on it. He has full impulse control. So Robin's question is, how much of that ability to control is spiritual, or on the other hand, psychological? How much of that ability to control is spiritual? No, I think it's a good question. So chapter 12 is saying it's not even a spirit. You don't have to be spiritual to experience this. It's natural. I'm not good enough on psychological to answer if it's a natural state of being that we could all be in. Is that a psychological? I mean, it seems like it takes work, but the point of the Tanya here is saying it's natural. You actually have it by birth. That woman in the parking lot was able to control herself, and instantly. The fact that it's instant shows how natural it is. It could be on, it could be off. So it's not spiritual. I mean, you need some spiritual support to find yourself in it, but which is what the Tanya is opening ourselves to realize. But anyone could practice it. So it's a psychological thing. I think it's something that we have to find it inside of us. Do tzaddiks have to do teshuvah? Yes, Shira. That's a great question. It says I think this is also from the Zohar. It says, when Mashiach comes, God's going to be asking good questions to the tzaddik, because even for Mashiach to come, it says that tzaddik has to do teshuvah. Teshuvah is not just on the hardcore sins and those bad red flag things. Tzaddik is every person on their level. They're always having to do teshuvah and working on themselves and being a better person. That never ends. Actually, let me add one more part to that. Chapter 15 is actually my wife Adina's favorite chapter. It actually says I don't know if this is the right expression, the one-up of a Beinoni over at tzaddik. That even though a tzaddik is on a much loftier, higher level, the Beinoni, there's something more valuable about the Beinoni. The Beinoni is working on himself or herself. The tzaddik has done the work already, and they don't have any impulses that they have to fight anymore. So they're not really in the workout anymore. So there's a one-up of a Beinoni over a tzaddik. And you're right. I would think they at least do on Yom Kippur. They have to do teshuvah all the time. And they have to work on themselves all the time. But it's on a different category, I think, than a Beinoni. I just have more notes I want to try to get through over here. That's a very good point, Shira. So the point that I'm reiterating over and over is that the Beinoni, it's realizing that innately, this is what chapter 12 will be about, is innate, hardwired, we are able to be naturally have self-control. So imagine someone says, you don't know me. I can't control myself. I couldn't stop myself from doing it. I had to lash out. It's something I had no control over my emotions anymore. So if someone really says that, then, and it's not really on the record, but kind of they have a neurological problem, because the Tanya is telling us that by birth they have the ability to control themselves. If they're saying that they can't, they weren't born normally. God created everyone in a way that they can control themselves. That's what the Tanya says. Because if you can't control yourself, then you shouldn't be able to drive, because maybe one day you'll decide to go off the freeway or ram into another car. Oh, no, then I could control myself. Oh, so you could control yourself. It's just you choose when you want to control yourself. Perfect. Then you're 100% healthy. That's what Tanya is about, is realizing that controlling yourself is up to you, is a choice. Your behavior is your control. You could master self-control. That's what Tanya chapter 12 is about. I and you can master self-control. You could be a Beinoni at any moment of your day. So now if a person says, well, Rabbi, Tanya is not answering my question. Maybe I could control myself, but those feelings inside of me are driving me crazy. It's killing me. Why do I have those negative feelings? Why are those popping up inside of me? So the Alter Rebbe says, okay, then you're healthy. Then you're normal. But let's first focus on your behavior. One thing at a time. Let's focus on your behavior. Realize that you can control yourself. Once you can control yourself, you make a commitment. You may have emotional lapses, and that you can't control yet. Later in the chapters, you could control that. But for now, you can't control your emotions and your emotions and your cognitive. But behavior is non-negotiable. And that was something demanded by the Alter Rebbe to his Hasidim and to every person, is control yourself. And you can do it. Like this. Here's a good example. Nowadays, if someone sneezes, it's like a panic. Oh my gosh, they sneezed. Or someone coughs. But like naturally, and even at our class, people sometimes cough. And what do they do is we have two nurses on the call with us. They go like this or like this. It's a natural, we're all taught that. I don't know how many times I tell my kids, go like this when you cough. We just, it's a reaction. You cough, you feel a cough coming, you go like this to cover your cough. It's a reaction. It's something natural that you do. The same is also self-control for your thought, speech, and action. It's a reaction. It's something that you can control yourself to do. It may seem hard, but the Alter Rebbe is instilling us in chapter 12 that it's actually something you were given by birth, innate. And therefore, you're responsible to do the right decision every single time. You can't tell a cop that pulled you over for speeding, I couldn't help myself. I won't do it in the next week. I'll be more careful. No. You did something wrong. You had the choice to control yourself from doing it or not. The Alter Rebbe says the same as with your action. You have the control to control your action this minute and control your action the next minute. Take it 1 minute at a time. Take it 1 day at a time. But the same as with your speech and even your thought, you can control what you're thinking about. You can't control what you're thinking of, which means the pop-up could come up that may be inappropriate. But if you're going to allow yourself to think about it and embrace it and welcome it in, the example I gave is, if anyone remembers, it's the knock on the door. If you're going to let that in, the intruder in, that's your choice. The knock, you can't stop. But if you're going to open the door and let them in, let the thought in, that's your choice. And that's a behavior that you could change. I think we ran out of time, but that's chapter 12. God willing, next week, I encourage anyone who didn't catch the whole class to read it, because I'm going to try to read most of the chapter inside to cover it, because it's a foundational chapter, as I texted many of you today. You're right, Diane, it's definitely tremendous self-discipline, but it seems Herculean. I think that's the word. It's actually something that we each can do. And the point of chapter 12 is that Beinoni is something in my capacity and your capacity. And Robin, so to answer your question, our job is to be a Beinoni. And that's why the book is called a Beinoni, is because to practice self-control. Once you practice self-control, we're going to work on fighting those inner meditations, using meditation to fight those inner emotions. But the animal soul is there. We're not fighting that yet. The control, if we're giving the car keys to the animal soul or to the godly soul, that's something we can control. Who we're giving the keys to, who we're giving the driver's seat to. The Beinoni, which is the important chapter 12, is the control that we're not giving those keys, that's thought, speech, and action, to the animal soul. We're keeping it in the domain of the godly soul. And by doing Torah and mitzvahs, it keeps us in that regimen. So like Shira was saying, the tzitzis is that constant reminder. But women don't even need that reminder because it's something so innate, so natural that we have. So men need more of a physical reminder, but women have it naturally, organically. It's there. So we just have to act on it. And we'll continue chapter 12, 13, 14, and 15. We'll hone it in, God willing, more. All right, we'll end with this. The recording, hopefully, God willing, will be available. We have a beautiful, fun Yiddish class at 12. We have a Jeopardy game. I'd love for you guys to join the Jeopardy. That's tonight at 7. It's really fun. We had some great fun last Saturday night. Tonight at 7, please join. And tomorrow night we have a Pirkei Avot class, Ethics of the Fathers, which is also very popular. While most of the Mishnah focuses on what we have to do, over here it's focusing on the person doing them, on how to be a better person inside. And that's Ethics of the Fathers, a Mishnah class tomorrow night at 7:30. All right, everyone, stay safe, stay healthy. I'm so glad we got to be together and see each other. And let's be a Beinoni this week. All the best for now.
Thank you.